there's something much more fundamental and much more meaningful to my mind with regards to this practice. And that is not just, now I'm not referring only to the practice of eating Kitniyot and not eating Kitniyot on Pesach. I'm talking about the fact that when you have a Jewish people that has been scattered across the globe for millennia, and then after such a long and bitter galut, we begin to return, as we have now for many generations already, starting at least 200 plus years ago, in ever-increasing numbers. The first Talmidim of the Gra who came to Eretz Yisrael, the first Talmidim of the Baal Shem Tov, we're talking about over 200 years already. Okay? And from that time on, the Jewish presence in Eretz Yisrael only increased over time. When the Jewish people begin to return to our ancestral homeland, to Eretz Yisrael, what we need to address is the following simple fact, that we are trying, or what we should be trying to do, is to reconstitute the Jewish nation. Not to continue as a disparate, separate and clearly identified ethnic groups from different countries. In other words, Hungarian Jews and Moroccan Jews and Yekim from Germany and Temanim from Teman, which we're all familiar with, these different backgrounds, ethnic backgrounds, geographical backgrounds of all the Jews in the world today. And there's no problem with that fact. That's the reality of history. But do we allow that to continue to be the norm? Do we allow that to be the basic format of the Jewish people, which is not really a nation at all, because we're divided and subdivided into these little categories and groups? If you have a situation in which today in Eretz Yisrael you have millions of Jews, Baruch Hashem, 6 million odd Jews, more in fact, and some of them don't eat Kitniyot, and some of them do eat Kitniyot on Pesach. By the way, the vast majority in Israel today do. I'm talking about those who keep Pesach. Then you have within Eretz Yisrael today a form of Galut Judaism which is being perpetuated within Eretz Yisrael, and if you suggest that halachically there's no way out of the situation, the Ashkenazim have to stick to what the Ramah writes. What did the Ramah write? Now I remind you on page 2, the Shulchan Aruch, source Heth. The Ramah wrote, HaMinhag ba'Ashkenaz la'ahmir ve'en l'shanot. If you can't make any change, and you're locked into this reality, into this system, then the Jewish people really is in a kind of frozen, state of hibernation, where it cannot move, it cannot change anything, it can only continue to exist in that state of Galut-induced coma, in which we have existed for so long, which is what the Galut is. It's a kind of coma, where we cannot really function, we can't really develop, we can't develop our culture, we can't do anything really as we should be doing it. If we allow that reality to control us and to define who we are, then I don't see how we can ever move forward to anything bigger. In other words, what I'm suggesting is that the question of whether we eat Kitniyot on Pesach or not is actually part of the roadmap to Korban Pesach. If you want to get to a Korban Pesach one day, then we have to reconstitute and redefine the Jewish people, the Jewish nation, not as individuals who have arrived here from 100 different countries around the globe, who all identify as Ashkenazi, as Sfaradi, Yehudi Polani, Yehudi Parsi. If we continue with that identification, that self-identification, we accept those Galut identities, and we think of ourselves in those terms, then really we are preventing the real reconstitution of the Jewish nation. The Jewish nation will never move forward if, when it comes to time to decide who's going to be the Kohen Gadol, we're going to have to decide whether it has to be Sfaradi or Ashkenazi or Temani perhaps, and whether he will eat rice on Pesach or whether he won't eat rice on Pesach. You can just imagine now. Imagine today that somehow miraculously it became possible to build a Beit Mikdash. In other words, the government, all the Arabs said it's a wonderful idea, and the government said, we're all for it, go ahead. You can just imagine we would have a Mikdash all ready to go, and now the question would be who's going to be the Kohen Gadol, or who's going to be on the Sanhedrin. You can just imagine exactly what would happen. It'd be just like the elections for the Rabbinut Rashit today. You would have these people rooting for these ones over here because they're Sfaradim and they're Ashkenazim, and he's from my yeshiva and he's from that yeshiva. The Jewish people can't work that way, and they will not work that way. It will never happen. The essential reason we cannot really arrive at the point where we have a Korban Pesach today is not because of Arabs, not because of the government, not all these. There are also issues, but imagine that these issues disappeared somehow. Those are not the real issues. The real issues are within us, within ourselves. We are not truly psyched up for the idea of getting our act together as a Jewish nation, living in Eretz Yisrael, leaving behind our Galut customs and practices which divide us, which cause division and perud levavot within Am Yisrael. If I can't invite my Sfaradi, or rather, my Sfaradi neighbor can't invite me to his home on Pesach, you can say what you like, but there's a perud right there. There is a certain division, there's a certain break, there's a certain distance that is caused and forms between us, which doesn't allow us really to function as one united group.
And there's two chief rabbis for the same.
Which is again a perpetuation of the Galut reality, bringing that into Eretz Yisrael and maintaining the Galut within Eretz Yisrael apparently indefinitely. What I'm saying is that we're not locked into that system. We can break out of that system, and I think we must. And even if you ask me, what about the Ramah, who says, "Haminhag ba'ashkenaz la'achmir wa'en l'shanoth," even if I accept that statement, which I don't, and I could explain at length why I don't, but let's say I do. But note what the Ramah wrote. What did he write? Haminhag efo? Ba'ashkenaz. We're not in Ashkenaz. We're not in Russia. We're not in Germany, which is originally what the word Ashkenaz means. We're not in Poland, where the Ramah lived. We're not in Russia. We're not in Ukraine. We're not in Hungary. We're in Eretz Yisrael. It has never been minhag hamakom of all the Jews in Eretz Yisrael not to eat Kitniyot. The Ramah could say in his day, all the Jews in my part of the world don't eat Kitniyot on Pesach. That would be a true, correct statement. It's true, by the way, that 100 years before his time, that's approximately when the minhag really became widespread. Only then. It's only about 600 years old, apparently. Because the Torah tells us that it's not the common practice, even amongst the Ashkenazim, and he was only writing 650 odd years ago. So it's approximately 600 years. But let's say we talk about the time of the Ramah, he would say, well, it's now the minhag amongst all the Ashkenazim. That's true, it was in his day. But where? He says Ba'ashkenaz. Why? You know why he says that? Because a minhag is talul b'makom. That's the halakha. A minhag is not something that you can pack up in your suitcase and go off and travel to another country and open up your suitcase and take out your minhag and put it on the table and there it is. That is not how minhag works. Minhag in halachic discussion, in halachic terms, is something which is done in a certain practice which is common and done by all Jews of a certain place. But if you move away from that place to another area where that is not the minhag, you are no longer required to follow that minhag. This is not something I made up. This is mufrash in the Gemara Masechet Pesachim, Perek Makom Shenagu. It's in Masechet Chulin. It's in a number of places in the Shulchan Aruch. That's why it says in the Mishnah and the Gemara and the Shulchan Aruch that if you live in city A, where the minhag is not to eat, shall we say, a certain thing or do a certain thing, and you move away from city A to city B, even now if you move there just for a holiday, just to visit a friend for a week or two, then nothing's changed. You're going to go back to city A. You have to maintain the minhagim of city A. But if you move away to settle in city B, where that is no longer the minhag, that is not the minhag, never has been, then as soon as you settle down in city B, you are now no longer required to follow the minhag that you practiced all your life. That is the halakha. It's in the Shulchan Aruch, it's in the Rambam, it's in the Torah, it's in the Gemara, it's in the Mishnah.
It's what we all do when we make Aliyah and keep one day Yom Tov.
Well, that's not the only reason, but there are many things that when you move permanently to a new country where there's a different set of minhagim, you are no longer required to follow the old set of minhagim. So when the Ramah says, "Haminhag ba'ashkenaz la'achmir," I say, okay, let's say that that's true. Let's say that it's not necessarily even valid there, but let's say it's valid in Ashkenaz 500 years ago when the Ramah wrote this in Poland. But it's not valid here. It's not something which you're required to follow here today. Hang on just 1 second. Therefore, I'm saying, and this is something, and this is the very last source. I have to tell you. This is the very last source on the end, at the bottom of the last page. The Gra, the Gaon of Vilna. It's known that the Gra, who was Ashkenazi from Lithuania, It's known that he wanted to move to Eretz Yisrael. It's more than that. It's known that he actually left Vilna and began to travel towards Eretz Yisrael. At some point, he turned around and returned. And that to this day is a mystery why this happened. We don't really know. And it doesn't matter right now. What matters is that it's recorded in his name, and this is the source. The source is called Ma'aseh Rav, Tosefet Ma'aseh Rav, at the end of that book. It reports the name of Rav Yaakov Kahana, who was someone who was close to the Gra, who said as follows. The Gra said to him, Lu yiten Hashem she'ezke lashevet be'eretz HaKodesh. Halavai that Hashem should give me the zchut to move and live in Eretz Yisrael, Eretz HaKodesh. Kedai hu li she'pater lechol ha'pahot minhagei Polish. If for no other reason, because then I would be free of the minhagim, literally of Poland. Now I don't know why he said Poland specifically, but I think he meant minhagei Ashkenaz. It's known that the Gra was a very independent thinker. He didn't like all the minhagim, all the practices that he saw that were very common in his part of the world, in Ashkenaz, in Lithuania, in Germany, what have you. He didn't agree with many things. But he felt, and he did actually express himself and actually did differently on many things, but most of the community didn't follow him, but some of his students did. That's why some of his students who came here over 200 years ago, they established here as a standard Ashkenazi practice, things that the Gra had said, which was a big deviation from the standard practice over there. So, just one second, I know you want to ask a question, just one second. The Gra said, Halavai should be able to move to Eretz Yisrael. I'm sure he had many reasons for moving to Eretz Yisrael. I'm sure that eating rice on Pesach was not the major one. But he did say, although, yeah, if you like rice, it's a pretty important, it can be something to take into account, yes. But no, I'm sure that wasn't his real reason. But he did say, if I move over there, then I won't have to follow all these minhagim that I have to deal with over here. In other words, the klal, the rule of thumb is that when we have made the move, Baruch Hashem, we're all here. We're not in Ashkenaz, we're not where the Ramah was, we're not where the Rosh was, we're not where any of these Chachamim were. We're in Eretz Yisrael. If we've made this move, we are now in a position, quite deliberately, and based on the most solid and fundamental halachic sources, to say we now are in a position to establish a new set of minhagim for the Jews in Eretz Yisrael, which will allow us to reconstitute the Jewish nation and to move forward to become what we are supposed to be here in Eretz Yisrael, which is a Mamlechet Kohanim and a Goy Kadosh. The word Mamlecha in the Torah is usually translated as a kingdom, but in modern parlance we would translate it as a state. Our purpose is to become a Jewish sovereign state, a national entity, a nation living in Eretz Yisrael according to the precepts and the principles and the values of the Torah. In order for us to do that, we have to break out of Galut mode Judaism and move into Geula mode Judaism.
Thank you, Rabbi Bar-Hayim. We would like to encourage our viewers to share these videos with friends and send in your responses. We would also like to suggest the following opportunity to our viewers. If you identify with Rabbi Bar-Hayim's message and would like to sponsor or dedicate a video interview with the rabbi in honor or memory of a loved one, if you would like to obtain Birkon Nusach Eretz Yisrael or invite the rabbi for a speaking engagement, please email us at office@machonshilo.org. If you are inspired by Rabbi Bar-Hayim's message and would like to get involved in Torah Eretz Yisrael activities in your local area, please fill out the relevant form by going to the link which appears on the screen.